Every verse of scripture carries significance. With that in mind, I was very intrigued about something I read in the book of Joshua, chapter 13. In verse 12, it outlines Moses' victory over the kingdoms of Bashan, of which the children of Israel defeated prior to crossing over the Jordan. However, verse 13 includes a most interesting detail. I will read it. Nevertheless, the children of Israel expelled not the Geshurites nor the Maachathites. The Geshurites and the Maachathites dwell among the Israelites until this day. It is important that we bring our attention to a verse a little earlier in Joshua 13:2, where God commanded the Israelites to possess all of Geshuri. Therefore, the presence of this people group represents a direct rebellion of the Israelites against God's instructions. Keep that in mind for later. So at this point, I was curious to know more about who were these people dwelling among Israel and what ultimately becomes of them. The answer to that question turns out to be quite fascinating. It starts off quietly enough. For about 300 years, we don't hear much from the Geshurites nor the Maachathites. Doesn't leaven in the Christian's life today often work like that too? A brother or a sister let something small into their lives that they shouldn't. It seems to sit there quietly enough, largely unnoticed until one day the consequences arise. For Israel, that day comes during the time of David. The next mention we have of the Geshurites takes place when David, who is driven into hiding by King Saul, is dwelling among the Philistines at Ziklag. 1 Samuel 27:8 reads, "And David and his men went up and invaded the Geshurites and the Gezrites and the Amalekites, for those nations were of old the inhabitants of the land, as thou goest to Shur, even unto the land of Egypt. And David smote the land, and left neither man nor woman alive, and took away the sheep, and the oxen, and the asses, and the camels, and the apparel, and returned and came to Ashish." So, early on, we find David carrying out God's command from the days of Joshua. However, later on, after David becomes king over all of Israel, he spares those nations, and we see rebellion rise from the midst of those people, not once, but twice. This rebellion does not begin with the shot of an arrow, as you might suppose, but rather with the exchanging of marital vows. 2 Samuel 3:3 gives us a list of David's sons, which reads, "And his, David's, second son, Chileab of Abigail, the wife of Nabal, the Carmelite, and the third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur." Did you hear that? King David marries a princess of Geshur. Did you also notice her name, Maacah? Remember, the Maachathites and the Geshurthites were the two groups of people the Israelites failed to expel on the other side of the Jordan. As a princess of Geshur, she surely descended from those people. With the name of Maacah, could she also have descended from the Maachathites? It seems likely, as two neighbor and people groups dwelling among the Israelites, they may have given sons and daughters to one another in marriage, as we see with many other neighboring kingdoms during that period of time. So we have royalty, a princess from the land of Geshur, with likely blood ties to both the Geshurites and the Maachathites. Now, did you catch which of David's sons she birthed? It was Absalom. Absalom was the charismatic, long haired son of David who would eventually rebel against his father. Years before that rebellion, Absalom kills his half brother Amnon, a premeditated act of revenge due to Amnon vilely assaulting Absalom's sister, Tamar. It is worth noting that following this event, Absalom flees to live among his mother's people in the land of Geshur for 3 years. 2 Samuel 13:37 to 38 states, "But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Amminahud, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there 3 years." So eventually Joab, the commander of King David's army, brings Absalom back. He lives in Jerusalem for 2 years, but is not permitted to be in King David's presence. Following this period of time, the two are then finally reconciled face to face. However, the reconciliation does not last. Absalom conspires to overthrow his father and take the throne. Absalom's army ultimately loses the battle against King David's men. Absalom himself is slain, following his hair famously getting tangled in a tree branch while fleeing. The aftermath brings up many questions. What had happened to Absalom during those 3 years in Geshur? Is this where the first seeds of rebellion were planted? Did his royal Geshurite family urge him to take the throne by force? Did anyone in Geshur find out that it was David who had leveled their cities while in exile? Did David's wife, Maacah, bring ulterior motives into the marriage? Now, no sooner had that rebellion ended than then a second rebellion followed, and it came as an immediate consequence of the first one. A man named Sheba led this second rebellion in the wake of David's battle against his son Absalom. Sheba fails in his purpose and ultimately flees before the face of Joab. When Sheba flees following his rebellion, it appears to be a Maacathites city in which he takes refuge. 2 Samuel 20:15 reads, "And they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth Maacah, and they cast up a bank against the city, and it stood in the trench, and all the people that were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down." Though Sheba flees to what may have been a familiar Maacathite stronghold, the townspeople are unwilling to perish for his sake. A wise old woman inquires of Joab to know who he is seeking, and is told Sheba, the son of Bichri. Following this, the townspeople deliver the head of Sheba to Joab. He spares their town and leaves in peace. So there we have it. Two instances of rebellion against King David, where both the rebels and the locations have strong ties to the Maacathites and the Geshurites, of whom we must remember God had commanded Israel to expel over 300 years prior. Is there a lesson for us today? Of course. The Israelites during the time of Joshua were taking possession of a physical promised land. Today, we seek to enter a spiritual promised land. Just as the Israelites were commanded to not mix with the surrounding nations, we as Christians are commanded to come out and be separate from the world and its ways. The Geshurites and the Maacathites were small people groups who did not appear to pose much of a threat. Their inclusion in Israel could be said to represent a relatively small compromise against what God had commanded. But that seemingly small compromise led to big rebellion, even rebellion of which seriously threatened David's position in the kingdom. So, how about you? Are there any seemingly small compromises in your life? Is rebellion threatening your position in the kingdom? If so, then learn from the mistakes of Israel and expel them now. Do not wait until the enemy's army is at your doorstep. Remember that even if we use soft words like compromise, what we really are talking about is sin. All sin goes against God, and all sin carries consequence, both today and sometimes even 300 years later. Thank you for watching. May God bless you and keep you.